You know, it's really hard to follow robotic teddy bears. You really, yeah. Talk about pressure. Is it man? Okay. Well, hi everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Jared Bendis. I'm Creative Director of New Media at Case Western Reserve University. It's a lot of words. This is developing educational virtual worlds with game engines. It's kind of a choice here. After I wrote the abstract, I could have gone two ways. I could have gone the heavy techie, shown you lots of pictures, done lots of code, or I could have gone the complete pedagogy and talk a lot of theory. And the more I've been doing this, we've been doing virtual worlds at Case for a very long time, and I realized that anybody can come and rant about technology. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of virtual worlds at Case, what we've been doing in an educational environment, what we've been teaching in it. We don't teach virtual worlds, so why not start with that. Give you a little bit of that and a little bit of the way I'd like to see it being done, both on my campus and around the place, and sort of build a dialogue and maybe ask some questions that not everybody is necessarily going to like, especially, you know, the people I work for. So the first thing is I'll talk a little bit about virtual worlds at Case. Way back when, we had a English professor who demanded as part of his coming to Case that we set up a MOOC. Any of you used a MOOC? Very few, and actually no one's brave enough to raise their hand. He taught technical writing for several semesters using a MOOC, which is a virtual world, text-based of course. We also had a history professor teaching computers and culture, the virtual self using the MOOC, and she later went on to use Second Life. So she had actually gone, big jump here from the MOOC to Second Life. But somewhere in between there, we had started doing a bunch of other courses, and I worked with somebody who was very keen on using virtual communities, and we designed a virtual reality castle to teach French civilization back in 2000. This was actually one of the larger projects that we did. I know it looks really, this is 2000, you had to just imagine, you know, how tough it was. Also, I'm not a great modeler. So back then what we were doing was we were building this virtual reality castle for the students to explore. We were using OnLive Traveler, which allowed for directional audio, multi-user directional audio, so the students as they walked around would actually be able to speak in the native language, which was, you know, the goal of this course, but they would also be able to explore the world and you know, see educational resources, because at the end we had a pedagogical goal, and that was what were they going to learn about, you know, medieval French culture, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. We had a theater professor ask us to build a GrecoRoman Theater, mostly because he wanted people to get a sense of the scale. He wanted people to stand on one end of it and then people stand on the other end of it and go, wow, this place is big and those people are tiny. And we had a Spanish teacher who built an event space. She actually had her students doing web projects, but she wanted to celebrate those web projects, and so what we ended up building was a Spanish gallery. And the gallery was a big empty space for people to come and meet and celebrate what these students had done in their classes. And the thing I want to point out here is that none of these classes are about computer science. None of them are about technology. The computers themselves, we did read Sherry Turkle and stuff, so there was a little bit of that. But it really was about what were the educational goals. And my biggest challenge is how do I get the humanities people involved and to realize that I'm not going to burn them. Because that's the other problem is you only get them once, and then if you burn them, you don't get them again. And it's kind of the most refreshing thing is that some of these people have said, you've got something new, what are we going to do? Oh, and then the last one is we had done an Adobe Atmospheres grant through the New Media Consortium to develop a history course called The Halls of Time. It was a multimedia approach to history, and both of the project got canceled on the technology and the academic side about the same time, but it was a really good plan. So from a technology point of view, to refresh, I mean, you know, back when I was in college, we used Tiny Crew, which was a mush, multi-user shared hallucinations. Anybody use mushes back in the day? Spent too much time there in college? Yeah. And then, of course, Crumo, a.k.a. the MOOC. The MOOC died a horrible death. The MOOC died such a bad death that to this day, if I bring up a new technology, the response is this another one of those MOOC things? So it's a dangerous thing sometimes to get labeled. NTT's Interspace was on our campus for about a blink. And then we used OnLive Traveler, which was probably the most effective of the technologies. And you're thinking, my God, this is a million years ago. Adobe Atmosphere, won't go there. And, of course, now Second Life. So we've got all of these things. And throughout this, not just the technologies have changed, but I've gone from this to this to this to this to this. So, I mean, the virtual me keeps changing as well. This one here, by the way, was my student's favorite. He took his avatar, made it fatter, and have less hair. So anyways, see, the virtual self is just a little skinnier. But the problem is I keep seeing this cycle coming in. Why do I keep changing platforms? It's not by choice. So I'm a little scared, and I've come up with something called the virtual world cycle. Look, a new company. I saw them at SIGGRAPH. Much hype, much hype. Let's all get on board. Big event. I bet if we get somebody famous to attend, they'll do something. We'll have some major thing. We'll get somebody to sponsor it. But it's difficult to build, and there's no reason to return, and there's no financial model, and the company folds. This has happened to me too many times. Now, I have nothing against Second Life, folks. I really don't. I'm just scared. And I'm scared because virtual worlds has a history of not being a viable, place for us to be. And as an educator, I know that I'm not anybody's core market. As a teacher, I know that if somebody goes, I'm going to aim at the educational market, I'm not getting rich, you're not getting rich. So I've got to figure out what else I can do. And I was thinking about this, I'm not a gamer. I'm not. But somehow I got here. And the reason I got here is that games took me to virtual worlds. I really went from Zork to Mushes. I didn't like playing, but there was something missing, so I did something else, and then to Moose. And I doomed to multi-user environments. So there really is something there. There's a different sort of connectivity, and again, I'm not a gamer. I'm not a successful gamer. I'm not an unsuccessful gamer. People, you just suck. That's why I know. And it all comes down to something that I've been working on for a while that I like to refer to as the hammock syndrome. And you'll need to bear with me for just one moment on this aside here. But every night, and this is a true story, but every night as I lay in bed, I dream that I'm laying in a hammock. And I'm swaying ever so gently in the breeze. And this is how I get myself to a nice, calm place to sleep. And every time I go to buy a hammock, I realize I hate them. I always feel like I'm going to fall out. My wife, she's like, why are you looking at a hammock again? Because I think what I really have discovered is I want to feel the way I think you feel when I see you laying in a hammock. It's an insecurity. And so technologically, what I want to do is I want to get it the way I think you're getting it. Now, I'm not saying that everybody gets it, but it's a lot like learning styles. They're different. Not everybody's going to get it. Not everyone's going to fit it the right way. So I start off with that grain of salt here because you're going to come up, there's no silver bullet. I like to think of virtual worlds in education as more like homeopathic medicine. It works for some, and the only way to find out is to try everything. And as an educator, I realize I can't put my students in this and go, this is going to be fun for you. There's no such thing as fun for everyone. But we can try to go for fun for most, or at least interesting, or more importantly, pedagogically sound. So moving on from my little hammock thing, I thought I'd break it down. I thought I'd go, what if I threw it all away? What am I really trying to do? Let's start back, I'm going back to curriculum design for a moment. What am I trying to do? And I really realized that there are 4 things I'm really trying to do as a teacher in a virtual world. The first one's communication. Straight communication, we've done it all sorts of ways. We've done it, with telephones, and we've done it with, online conferencing. And we're building virtual classrooms. But the interesting thing about a virtual classroom is that a virtual classroom it doesn't matter where we are. See, right now, none of us cares where this room is or what's going on in any of the other rooms. We're disconnected. We only care about the minuscule network that is ourselves. So we really don't need a connection with a bigger community. We just need a little one. So if I said I needed classrooms, I need 1,000 classrooms. I don't care if they exist in a real space or if they're connected anywhere. Everyone go to classroom 6. There we are. Well, actually, we're in 8. The other side of it is exploration. And exploration is when you go out and the world has some content all to itself. Matter of fact, I'm a big fan of single-user virtual worlds. Because multi-user virtual worlds are kind of strange sometimes. I always talk about art museums. Wouldn't it be great to build an art museum in a virtual reality environment? 5 minutes? I thought I had till 3:30. Okay. Wow. So I could finish this in 5 minutes if you needed me to, but all right. But when I talk about art museums and building a virtual reality art museum, and everyone kind of nods when I say that, why would you want that to be multi-user? In an art museum, hell is other people. Really? I mean, wouldn't you like to walk around an art museum alone? You take it all in, maybe one person, but it's alone. Single user exploration allows one person to seek something out. And the worst of it is, if I tell you that there might be someone else in the room, you suddenly try to find that person. It changes your task. Oh, there's somebody else might be here. Changes it from what you're trying to do to, oh my God, someone else might be here. So again, single user has its own place as well. Of course, creation's tricky. I always have history professors going, let's have people create. You really wouldn't have them do carpentry, though. You know, it's maybe you'd have them select, maybe you'd have them shop, but you wouldn't necessarily have them build from scratch. Because what are you trying to teach? The art, the craft, the what? It really is a question about what your particular goal is. And this happens, by the way, beyond virtual worlds. I have to tell a lot of English professors that they're not teaching filmmaking. That they don't have time for it. And I could teach them a class in filmmaking, but what are they trying to do? They're trying to teach writing and rhetoric. And then, of course, the higher-end questing collaboration, which is where everyone wants to start. Let's start at the most complex thing we can, but let's break it down first, and then maybe get back over here. This is, I'm going to move on to the deconstructing virtual worlds part. This is where I kind of say, what would I do if I could build it from scratch? If I could break the Second Life hegemony, I didn't say that. And really what I wanted to do was look into what is a virtual worlds environment if we were to build it from scratch. Giant system. Let's start with money. Obviously, currency needs to exist. I mean, it doesn't need to be Linden's. It could be PayPal. It could be anything. But it needs to be standard, and it needs to be big. I'm trying to think open source, but I'm also trying to think something that we could all do at once. This is funny because I'm not an open source kind of guy. Intellectual property is probably the hardest thing here. What is value? Now, when I say intellectual property, I don't mean from a legal perspective. I don't really care about that at the moment because there's plenty of talks on that. And I'm going to jump ahead from content creation to the big thing here, which is browser versus player. You browse the web. The content seems free because I'm browsing it. You play videos and audio files, and I'll pay for those. And there's a sense that if you're playing it, it's worth money, and if you're browsing it, it should be free. And the disconnect with virtual worlds is that we're kind of browsing things that we're wanting you to pay for. And we have to sort of get you to realize what intellectual property is. What are you willing to pay for? People aren't willing to pay for browsers. They're not willing to pay for browsers, but they're willing to pay for server space. Something feels right about that. Well, you're hosting it for me. I'll pay you for that. And so you kind of think about going to the web model here. Who gets rich? Why? It's not going to be the people making the browsers. It's not going to be necessarily people making the content. It's going to be people hosting. And that's my cynical approach to this all. But I keep wanting to think, what am I trying to build, and who would I want my partners to be along the way if I were to start from scratch? I know someone's going to ask me, what are you playing with, since I mentioned technology, and I really don't have a lot of it in my hand. I'm working with HalfLife. Have any of you worked with the HalfLife engine? Valve is very, very good about this. They'll sell you educational seats of HalfLife for $10 a seat that lasts for 3 years. So that's cheap. And the best part about it is all of my students already know how to develop for it. I'm not their target audience, so not only are they pretty much willing to almost give it away, but I don't have to worry about them going under because they don't care about me. And that's what's important, is the game companies have a financial model, and I can just get their scraps. And it's more than just scraps, though. There's a community of developers. There's plenty of people out there already working. I'm using a little program called the FPS Creator. You would not want to do this for a multi-user, but it's just a little first-person shooter. It's really hard to convince your boss to use these types of technologies if you can't eliminate the guns first off. Don't ever show your boss deathmatch mode and go, now imagine this with rainbows and unicorns. You have to get rid of the guns first. You have to spend a little time, sort of your own little loss leader. My one boss once went into a deathmatch mode, kept getting killed, respawned and killed and respawned. She never got to walk around. You have to, work a little bit better than that, to introduce people. I spend a lot of time, most of my time, managing expectations. With FPS Creator, I'm managing your expectations. It's a little program. It's like 50 bucks. It makes levels. You can publish them. It's easy. Everything's drag and drop. It's kind of cute. I'm not going to say that you're going to go great. It's not multi-user, but it's quick and dirty. And that's a nice start sometimes. I just wanted to build a room and see what it was like. They do have multi-user, like up to 8 people at the same time, but like all physics goes away, so it's not that fun. Realm Crafter, if you've heard of this, we're hoping. Realm Crafter is a very inexpensive, massively multiplayer authoring tool that no one I know has gotten to work properly yet. But we all have faith, and that's the point, you know, because I would much rather purchase something and tinker with it than, you know, build from scratch or, you know, risk somebody else. We're also using things like Blitz 3D and Dark Basic because it's kind of funny. I walk around, I ask students, hey, does anybody want to work for me in Blitz 3D and Dark Basic? And my students go, can I work from home? I already own them. That was nice. That was convenient. I've got students who aren't even in Cleveland over the summer working for me because they promise they're working. And the trick to this is when you actually get students working for you, I don't mean students, they're not my, like, I don't teach this. I teach students something else. These students are my student employees. I have to get them not to put all their 20 hours in on the first day of the week. I have to make them spread out their time. And I know for a fact that my Second Life students, one of them I think is working for me about 40 hours a week and I'm paying her for 10. It's just the way it works. They're obsessive. They want it. There's ownership there, which is nice, but it's also because the community exists. And of course, using things like Milkshape and Caligari GameSpace. I want to talk about a case study, though, and I wanted to spend, wow, it's already 20 after. I want to spend a minute or two talking about something where I'm not just, you know, talking theory. We decided, what could we do? What could we build? What would be fun? And we are building something from scratch because we want to build a tool very specific for my specific audience. My specific audience are teachers at a university, and their students, and none of these computer science. I'm thinking art history. So we decided to build a virtual reality gallery maker. One of my students likes to call this the Gallerina. I will tell him none of you laughed because I've been telling him it's a bad name. But the Gallerina, as he likes to call it, is a Flash-based authoring tool, and he's building it. I mean, it's going to be hard, heavy-coded, but it's basically a drag-and-drop tool that will allow somebody very quickly to drag walls in an empty space, two-dimensionally, move those walls around. All you got to do, select a wall, put some art on it, and hit publish. Now that's one side of it, and I want it to be as simple as possible. And when he was publishing, we're getting XML and picture files. Then we're building a browser. Matter of fact, I've got two students building two different browsers and two different engines. Because what we want to do is actually, a little competition never hurts, but we also want to see what's going to look better. So I've got one student building it in Dark Basic, one student building it in Blitz 3D, and the Gallerina guy wants to build it in Flash as well, so we'll eventually let him do whatever he wants. So it gets to the idea where we're starting around something in the middle, though. In the middle we have a data set. We have an idea that there are walls with art on it. And we do everything to bring it together. We build a tool to create those walls with art, and we build a player to browse those walls with art. It's single user. But I also want something that's very, very simple, not just from a browsing point of view, but from a creation point of view. Because some people do think that creation is important for them. And I can't necessarily send my art history faculty members into Second Life to build, because they're not gonna. Now that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I can send all my other kids in to build, and I could just say, you work with him, go do. But I'd rather say, here's a tool, go do. And I want it as simple as possible. I'm actually getting everything I do is becoming simpler and simpler as I go through this. So I've ranted for about 20 minutes, which my watch is right? So I'm going to take questions, because I actually know that usually when I talk about these things, there are more questions, and I figure we'll go there. So, any questions? Oh, that's a great question. Oh, yeah, and I totally missed the point. Thank you. The reason you would want to do this is twofold. First of all, I'm very into the spatialness of it all. And the trick is, if you create a database full of images, I'm going to make sure that you hard code how big those images are. See, one of the things is you can choose to put art on a wall, but you can't choose how big it is in a real art gallery. So the trick for a lot of people is if they start to putting together virtual exhibitions, they're going to realize that space matters. That there's a spatial component there. But also it allows you to put together what I like to call the gallery of impossible and improbable. It allows people to make connections. I mean, one of the things that you learn in museum studies is there's hot debates over how you should hang things. We work off of one convention right now of what order you put art in, and this would allow people to experiment and create their own types of materials. So that's one of those are really some of the pedagogical goals of this. It's not just about that, though it does allow you to experience it on the wall versus just a slideshow, and that does overcome a lot of things there. Health science. You You know, it's an interesting question. We actually, our nursing school has like a stroke simulator and stuff. So and our dental school has a dental simulator. It turns out that the medical school, the nursing school, and the dental school are heavy tech into some of the hardcore VR. So I don't have to deal with them. No, they have their own teams and their own grants. I have a student and a half. I run the university's Multimedia Center, and this is one of those things this is a bone that they throw me. They let me continue to do this. But we'd be happy to if it came around. But we're mostly trying to hit, you know, again, College of Arts and Sciences, our humanities, and we talk to engineers too, but again, they tend to do things else. Yes?
How good are physics engines in some of these tools?
That's a good question. Some of them pretend they're non-existent. But like in games like HalfLife is actually one of the better ones to be using if you're interested in what the physics engine is like. But again, for the most part, when I'm talking to people about what they're trying to do in it, rarely have I had that question. So if you're asking that question, instantly you got to go towards the ones where you're going to specifically look at that and start building beyond. So I would say, yeah, there are some that are great, and there are some that aren't. But I used to go back when we used to teach web development. They'd go, well, does it have this feature? I would go, do you need that feature? And if you say you do, great, and then we should make sure you find it. Oh, no, that's good. That's that. You need to be then you'd absolutely be needing to look into some of the more heavy engines. And by the way, I mentioned HalfLife, but there's many companies out there that'll work off the same sort of license. You just tell them, I'm a teacher, we're an educational institution, we're looking for floating licenses, lab licenses, whatever. You'd be surprised at how flexible they can be because they know they're not getting rich off of you, and they also do know that your students are buying their products. Yeah.
How do you help faculty, particularly those who aren't technical, think about how they could use this?
Very carefully. No, we spend most of the time managing expectations. And I don't just manage the expectations of the faculty, but of the students that they're teaching. The first time Second Life was introduced on our campus, one of my students walked up to me and said, I get it, it's a video game for people that don't like to kill people. If that's how they're introduced from it, you've lost. But that's a valid point, so we have to manage the expectations. We offer workshops. I'll meet with anybody for as long as it takes to sit down and brainstorm projects. So that's one of the things that we do, is we're here to help and say, what are you trying to do? What do you want to do? You can't do that. And sometimes we say, you shouldn't do that. Because we don't do this, we don't do technology for technology's sake. We do try to go, we start off with what are your educational goals? And some of them get really mad when I say that. And if I go, what's your pedagogical goal? And you get huffy with me, well then, you know, you shouldn't have been there in the first place. But we just spend time with them. And again, realize that failure is an option. Failure is an option. It's not every project's going to work. That's what experiments are for. You say, this is a beta. Maybe we'll have success, maybe we'll have failure. It's not going to ruin you failure. And so we spend time making sure people realize that we're experimenting here, and that we will grow and we will learn, and that they want to be a party to that. And that helps. If I tell you from day one that we might not succeed to where you want to go, and you're still on board, then we'll succeed on a different level.
How do you help people visualize where they want to go?
It's a lot of talking and a lot of showing and a lot of talk. It really is a trust issue. I mean, if your faculty don't, you know, I don't know what your relationship is. You have to sit down and figure out what it is that you can do and what you want to do. When somebody asks why we develop a tool like this, why we're working on the VR Gallery Maker, it's for 3 reasons. We can do it. Our reach is not too crazy. It has more utility than just the one person I'm building it for. And it does have utility. Those 3, and it's kind of cool. Those 4 things are the things that we look for. But mostly is, can we do it? And a lot of people come to the projects that we can't do, and I go, we can't do it. It's not because we don't want to, it's just because we can't. That helps. Yes?
Can you sell me on the advantage of having a virtual art gallery pedagogy
versus a real art gallery? Okay, I am not attempting to replace real art galleries. All right, and I've said this more than once. A virtual experience is a real one. When you have a virtual experience, you have had an experience. Your brain triggers it as experience. It's not as necessarily good as a real one. I went and saw the Statue of David in Las Vegas. Now, it's better than looking at a picture. It's not as good as seeing the real one. But I had an experience. Matter of fact, I had such an experience, I wanted to go see the real one. So virtual experiences can lead to real experiences, not necessarily replace them. But they can also create experiences that would not exist in any other way. So they can create the experience of curating a show. They can create experiences of comparing art in so many other ways. So that's one reason of doing it. But the idea is the whole, for me, with virtual worlds, it's about people experiencing something and how we make that experience, I don't want to say as real as possible, because again, it's always real, but as effective towards my pedagogical goal as possible. Oh, one more, yep. I run the Multimedia Center case, so all of my students run the center. I mean, they're the things. I pull each one of them out, gets to show me if they can model. Some of them demonstrate amazing skills and then threaten to quit when I make them use them. But I only get like 2 students a semester to work. We pick projects that we think we can do with faculty members that I know and trust. People don't randomly come up to me. We spend a lot of time. As a policy, I will train any student on campus to do anything. So if a faculty member says, I got a grad student here, I want them to learn to do X, we will train them because it's to our advantage. If they say, I've got a class I want to learn to teach to do X, we will teach that class because it's to our advantage. So if they said, we want everyone building in Second Life, which they haven't said, but if they did, then we would set up Second Life workshops and we would train them because that would be a high priority for us because we teach people to fish. That's what we do because that's the #1 way to help ourselves. As for hand-holding, we spend a lot of time pre-screening who we're working with. I hate to be that way, but it's just true. It's not one of those things where they come up to us with money and say, we'd like you to do an X. We do it the other way around. We build relationships and do what we think is possible. No, because this is not my primary goal, so they're just going, how did you manage to squeeze that in between the X, Y, and Z? And also, that's one of the reasons we do things with legs. Again, if I can do a project that I can say now someone else might do that project or it will carry over, or things that, my favorite, things that create things that other people will then use, you know, so that they actually, you know, generate, look, that gallery someone else can then browse. Things like that. So anything like that is a useful thing. But again, sometimes it's a matter of, it's never been a matter of sing for your supper, but you do play that game. I know the game you're talking about, and yeah, I'll tell you later. It's just difficult sometimes. And I think that's my time. Is that right? Oh, wait, one. Oh, yes. Well, and I know this is my last question. Well, 2 things on that. The first one is that I have done that. I don't like to do that. I don't believe in distance education because I like your full attention, please. Now, I know that some of you were zoning off. I saw 2 of you sleeping. And some of you were emailing or texting or whatever. But I know for a fact that if you're all sitting in your rooms, there's a inherent fallacy to virtual reality, and that is it assumes a single focus like we do with games. And multitasking is the way of the world. So I know if you're sitting in your room, you are not giving me your full attention, and that means you're going to miss more than you're going to see, and I don't like that. So that's the problem that I find with educational virtual reality is that from a live perspective, I don't have your full attention. And I'm not being an egotist to say that in a classroom I do, but I guarantee I have more of it, because there's not someone in your doorway going, hey, you want to go do this, and you look like you're attentive in my classroom. So it's kind of a catch-22. But this is not a new phenomenon. This goes all the way back to teleconferencing. So I thank you for your time. A lot of this is in the article, and if you have any questions, you're welcome to contact me or email me.
Thank you. Thank you.